Welcome. This is Jack's Tea Party, and we have our guest here today is Bill Bustance. He's the proprietor for, is it TriggerBoxing?
Yes, TriggerBoxing, and we operate, more importantly, I'm the director of Traverse City At-Risk Boxing, which is a 501c3 organization that provides after-school fitness programs for kids and competitive opportunities for boxers to enter the Olympics.
Okay, great. Well, this tea party format is, you know, anybody can have a tea party, right? You don't even need to have tea, right? So we use espresso. I like espresso, and I went to a tea party once, and they didn't even have tea. So they look at me like I was crazy when I said, "Where's the tea?" You know. So anyway, this is a tea party, even though we have coffee.
Right.
I originally approached you when I knew you were involved in boxing with kids. Now that is really, on the face of it, it's kind of an odd thing because a lot of people think boxing is violence, and it's really not something you'd want to teach kids. What do you say about that?
Yeah, there's some people have that. You can't please all the people all the time.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, boxing and baseball were the two most popular sports in America until the invention of television. And then, you know, basketball and football, which are really good TV sports, kind of overrun. So, I mean, when I was a young man growing up, there was about 5 times as many boxing clubs as there are right now. And I'm sure when my father was growing up, there was probably 10 times as much boxing clubs as there is right now.
Okay. So there's a few boxing clubs around Michigan, isn't there?
Yeah, there are. Most of them, unfortunately, are set up in urban settings, which isn't. I mean, it's fortunate for the kids in the city, but there's all this rural poverty in places where kids, people just can't get their kids to the city for events. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we do in Traverse City is service the community here, but we also have some outreach programs out in Kalkaska. We're working with it's an organization called the Seeds, and we're establishing training facilities in other schools. We've got, like I said, one in Kalkaska, one on Sutton's Bay, and they've got grant money for these impoverished areas to try and do enrichment activities for kids. So we've been fortunate enough to work with them along with the probate court and other institutions in town to, expand our program.
So you get it's an organization that is attractive to kids that maybe they're not the same kids that would be in band or football.
It's really hard to put a stereotype on the thing. A lot of the kids are individual players. They're not very good team players, but that's not, it's such a wide range. You get all kinds of kids. You get talky kids, you get quiet kids, and what you have to do is you have to have determined kids, though, because it's quite a bit of work, and if they're not determined to get through there, then their time in boxing is short-lived.
So they don't just show up and beat on each other. There's a program that's...
Well, they're not ready to beat on each other. It takes quite a bit of work before they're ready to do that. I mean, they come in thinking that like they are ready. It's really funny to operate a boxing gym because, now with the advent of the cage fighters and the stuff, you get all these crazy guys come in the gym and they I want to learn how to box, and some of them, they're quiet when they come in, and some are, hey, I used to beat up 6 guys and now I want to do it legal. And you hear all these crazy stories from people, but and it's we kind of watch the whole thing. But our primary focus is to, provide limits and structure for kids that really aren't. A lot of people are struggling in this economy and trying to do things and don't have time, and we like to instill that herd instinct in people, so they come in here, join, they're part of something, part of a little community, and everybody works out really hard. So when you come in there, it's always pretty positive. It's pretty. Hey, you get that done, do that stuff. But when everything gets done, everybody's exercised. They've all worked hard. All their endorphins are firing. They feel good, and they communicate a little bit.
Well, when I was surprised, I won a Kiwanis radio auction. You gave a gift certificate to the radio auction, and I think I had a 4 workouts and
4 workout session.
I was quite concerned about getting hurt. Well, you don't. Most of it isn't just boxing. I mean, a lot of it is conditioning, right? And footwork and coordination, and there's a lot of pieces to this besides just winging them. Right?
Well, sure there is. No, there's a ton of it, and it's kind of. It's ironic because, I mean, a lot of good people have told people that when you go through life, you should give more than you take. Mm-hmm. And boxing's one of those sports where when the bell rings, you better give more than you take. But that type of dominance that gets reflected during that time of the 3-minute rounds, it's all based on how much they've been submissive before that to the training schedule, to the training program, developing relationships with their teammates, with their coach, and you need to bring a totally determined, athletic human being in there that's ready to compete.
And one thing that impressed me about boxing and young people is we're asking so much from young people. When they're going to school, they've got 8 hours of school, and they got to be on their behavior, and if you don't concentrate, you don't make progress.
Right.
And there's something about boxing where if you lose your concentration for a half of a second, you get instant feedback, right?
Instant feedback. There's instant reinforcement there. And it's funny because, and I tell it because there's really no natural fighters. I mean, when it's all learned behaviors. And when people come, I mean, some people think that they're naturally tough or naturally this or naturally that, but when they get out there, they figure out that this is totally goes against what your nature is. Like when the proverbial poop hits the fan, what mm-hmm. people do instinctively is go like this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do. In boxing, I mean, you keep your eye on the guy, so when something's coming at you, instead of doing this, you got to look down.
Right.
And another natural reaction when you want to get even is you cock it back and then you let it go. But we just straight down, let it go. It's learned behavior. But it takes a long time to get that natural motion out of there of what. And you're put into these fight situations. And what happens is when you go in there, the body, when a human gets in a situation like that, their body chemistry starts freaking out, and their brain starts producing a lot of adrenaline, which mm-hmm. is, of course, the fight chemical.
Right.
And non-adrenaline is the run chemical. And our body produces a lot more fight chemical than it does run chemical. So you'll see guys twitching and stuff like that because they have all that adrenaline in there. But it's conditioning, timing, learned behavior, developing relationships with other people on a real scientific schedule that makes a boxer a good boxer.
But during the fight, you can't let your emotions get the better of you, right? You gotta keep your technique, huh?
No, there's only one emotion that I teach, and that's fear. It's the only one that has any value. I mean, a lot of people say, well, I've got this angry kid, if boxing would be perfect for him. Wrong, it's the worst one for him.
Oh.
The first thing you try, you remember Muhammad Ali when he used to go out there? I mean, he purposely went out there and ticked people off so they would get angry and try and kill him.
Okay.
See, in boxing, people talk about getting hurt. And this all is in the realm of hurt. But it's not within the realm of killing. It's in the realm
You've met
of
some
control.
interesting boxers, haven't you?
My life's been rich with people.
I think we need to back up. We jumped right into this subject, and who is this guy, and why does he think he knows something about boxing? So you're run an organization that helps kids at risk, but you were a professional boxer at one time. Isn't that true?
Yep. I had my first amateur bout in 1967, and fought in the amateurs, and then I took some time out of boxing there when I was going through college and going through periods, and then I entered professional boxing when I was in my late 20s, and I had my last bout in 1984. Mm-hmm. And then I tried one of those MMA fights in the 90s, which succeeded at and quit doing.
MMA is that what does that stand for?
That's the cage fighting and the.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah.
So you did a little George Foreman routine. Come back from.
I did.
Old age and just want to show these kids something, and
we did.
Good for you. But I think that I did see the match that your last professional boxing match. You kind of got gassed out in the end, didn't you? Or?
Well, in my last fight, I did, and
Yeah.
I have never. I mean, at that time, kind of reality set in. I'm up here in Traverse City, and I'm trying to be a professional boxer. Well, there's really nobody in Traverse City for me to train with. You know, I used to go down to the Croc Gym and work out there, and come back and try and get spar. And I had Big John Brayton. He was a heavyweight back then.
I remember him.
Yeah, and I train his son right now, so he's. And but I had John to work, but it was just I didn't have a lot of sparring. I didn't have a lot of day-to-day work, and you know the reality kind of sits in there when you got people who are doing it every day in the city. That you know you need to be competitive. You need to be ready.
You got a benchmark in the other fighters. If you don't work out, I mean you don't got to be pushed.
No,
right?
that's it, and that's really how I lost that last fight, was out of conditioning, and that's why I kind of reality set in, and I thought, well, I don't think I'll be the world champion living in Traverse City, and I didn't want to move to Detroit,
and you got to jump into it big time, or you're going to have more experiences like that if you don't totally commit.
Right.
Yeah, I remember Ali stuck around a little bit longer than I thought he should have too. You know, because we all age.
Well, he did, but and that's a difficult thing with boxers because they get all this personal attention, and they are when you're watching a fight, you're watching one or two guys. You're not watching the whole team, and they become it's there's just a lot of excitement in it, and I think that people kind of get addicted to the excitement, and they just there are some guys some guys have the brains, make their money and quit, but very few and far between. Larry Holmes made money and quit. Sugar Ray Robinson made money and quit. Joe Kalkaska made money and quit. But on the long term, a lot of these guys go ahead and fight, and it's not over economics; it's over the attention.
But you kind of did the ideal. After you graduated from active boxing, you got into working with kids, and you've got your own gym now too, right?
Yep. No, my wife and we've been married for 25 years, and the first year we were married, I took a couple guys down to Grand Rapids for Golden Gloves, and we've trained kids in other people's gyms and backyards, and we've been at it now. We've owned that building on Woodmere for 6 years, and we were in another building on Garfield for 7 years. So we've had a facility for 13 years in town and been training kids.
Yeah, how long has your family been involved in boxing?
Well, pretty much our whole life. I started watching Muhammad Ali when I was 9 years old on Wide World of Sports, and was just totally enamored with the sport. And then I met Bill, and he had been involved in boxing forever, so it was love at first sight.
Okay.
And our kids, Bill fought, I fought, actually I had 2 fights, and then our kids fought. Our youngest daughter was the 139-pound junior national champ. And
you mean nationwide?
Yeah, she was the best female fighter in the United States for her age and weight. I was the coach for the Michigan women's team in 2002 and took her to Scranton, Pennsylvania to win that championship. And then again took the Michigan women's team to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where she took the silver medal the following year in 2003. And
did they stay with boxing, or did they just move on?
They've both moved on.
Okay.
The oldest daughter just fought once, I think, basically because she kind of had to. It was her birthright, and it was something she had to do. But they've both graduated from college with bachelor's degrees and kind of moved on. So.
Okay.
And Bill and I just, we were on the boxing gym and basically started coaching 25 years ago, the first year we were married.
What about the women, though? Is this something new for the women to be involved in the boxing?
Well, I mean, women have been actually boxing since the 1800s, but I mean, as far as popularity-wise,
Right.
yeah, I think it's new. I mean, this year, 2012. I'm sorry, not this year, but 2012 is going to be the first year that women will actually compete in 3 weight classes in the Olympics.
Oh, okay.
So,
So it's getting more and more legitimate for women to
it really is.
be in
I mean,
organized
women,
boxing.
Yeah, and women have actually been boxing for quite a few years. I mean, they've had national tournaments their own, and have actually fought national championships, such as our daughter, and fought all over the world. I mean, there's women that travel through USA Boxing and compete all over the world, just like the boys do.
And you have children's programs that you're involved in?
We do the after-school program for kids, and then we also work with the probate court, and then do pilot programs with other school districts. So, yeah, we love working with the kids.
Okay.
And, you know, I've had kids come through that have problems and issues, but then we have kids that are, you know, really good students and don't have any problems. And I think it's a really neat atmosphere for them to kind of coexist together. You know, it works really well. And I found, I think that a lot of times when kids have trouble, or when they're in trouble, they have a tendency also to blame everybody for the reason that they're in trouble. You know, it wasn't my fault, it was your fault. And they think if they can get into a sport, but especially boxing, you get out there in the ring and you don't have anybody to blame but yourself. I mean, you train hard, but you get out there and you either win or lose. There's one winner, there's one person that walks away not winning. And so it's all on your shoulders. So there's no excuses, there's no, you know,
Does it help kids?
Really good.
What about self-esteem? Do you see a lot of kids that come up with their self-esteem?
I think self-esteem isn't something that happens right away. I think, you know, it's something that you have to earn. But I think the kids that stick with it and develop a work ethic because of it absolutely have a real strong sense of self-esteem. So I think anytime you do anything, it's not just with boxing, but anytime you do anything, you know, where you accomplish a goal that you set, you gain self-esteem from that.
Your wife, she boxes too?
She did a little boxing, yeah. Yeah, she's tough.
And your daughter?
Both my daughters boxed, yeah. My Adana was national champion in 2002. And she got a scholarship to Michigan State to row from her boxing. And she never rowed before, but they liked the way she boxed. So, and she did good rowing too. So it's always been part of the Bustance family's boxing.
Well, that's isn't that some of the best conditioning that there is? The training.
Well, they've done, you know, they've done scientific studies where they've broke down the 10 components of athleticism. I can probably name 9 or 8 off the top of my head. Strength, power, which isn't the same as strength, speed, balance, endurance, flexibility, durability. And boxing scored 9 out of 10, and most of those boxing is the hardest sport on the planet, barring none.
Okay. Now, isn't there adults? I mean, you've got the kids, but you've got ladies that like to box.
We've got ladies. I've got old guys. We've got a wide variety of people. We got some of the cage fighters drift in there. All the kids that we work with, and I've got some older yuppies that I come in there and train that are, I shouldn't say older, but they're too old to fight, but they're not too old to fight competitively, you know, but they come in and train, and then we got quite a few ladies that come in there. And I train some, my wife trains some.
And you think we're going to be able to get some of those ladies to give us a demonstration of what they're involved in? And
no, they'd love to. No, I think women are as proud as guys. I mean, I love training girls. I love training my daughter. It's just to find that determination in a female. There's usually so many things for them to do that it's hard to kind of focus that. But no, I love training girls. They're sometimes they're easier to train because they don't have any preconceived notions about what being tough is.
Is it okay to film your daughter and put her on TV? Okay, great. And what's your name?
Olivia.
Bolivia?
Yes.
Okay, great. I want to put this on public access TV. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay.
Yes, I'm going to train with Robin, 2 pads.
Okay, what's going to happen in the training? Do you know?
In training?
Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, she's going to hold up the pads, and she's going to drill me on punches.
Okay, so you're more or less training you on how to throw a punch?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. You ready?
Bit more teachable, and if you've got a guy that thinks he's tough, sometimes you spend 3 or 4 sessions just teaching him that he's really not that tough.
Well, and then you, if you don't know how to punch at all, then you learn from scratch and you learn the right way.
Well, everybody,
But
you're right.
If you already think you know how to punch,
Right.
You have more of a problem, right?
Well, you do, because what your idea of punching is something natural. It's not something learned. It's something that's going to cock back. It's something that's going to, that's just, and it's like I said, it's scientific and it's a learned behavior. I mean, pugilism is a science, and it's a science of how to hurt people in little bites until they quit.
You had, you talk about people drifting into your gym. You had some guys from New York.
Oh, well, that was one of the neatest stories I've ever had in a boxing gym, and my wife got a call actually from a guy from New York, and he trained in Gleason's gym. Now, if you know anything about boxing, Gleason's gym's been around since the turn of the century, and right now they got quite a few stockbrokers training there, a few professional boxers training there, but it's got a sterling reputation. When you're in New York and you're a boxer, you're going to work out at Gleason's gym. So, and he had been working out. He said, well, I work out at Gleason's gym in the executive boxing program, and he said, he was in town. He wanted to use our gym. And I said, well, yeah. My wife said, come on in and do it. And she had a class that night, so I didn't meet the fella, but I guess he came in and he had all his gear and stuff and worked out over there. And he said, well, he wanted to come back the next day and bring a couple friends because he was in town for the day. I said, oh, sure, bring him on in. So I was finishing up, and I'm a barber also by trade, cosmetologist, and I was finishing up a haircut there, and this guy comes in and introducing himself as the guy I talked to, and then all of a sudden I hear this bum 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 outside, and 2 other guys walk in and they come in off their Harleys, and they come in, and I noticed that they all got their gear and stuff, so I figured they're safe to get dressed and go out there and stretch out, and I'll finish out my haircut, and then
But you're kind of on your own time. You don't know these guys, right?
No. I mean, I told them I would work with them for an hour because I didn't know who they were, and I don't trust people in my gym. I mean, I watch over everything that goes on. I could get sued, and I've got so I'd like to keep an eye on what's going on. So these guys went out there, and they were, like I said, getting ready. So I looked at the 3 guys, and the one guy that was up in the ring looked like he was the best. They had done some boxing and karate and stuff like that, but he looked like he was the best boxer. So I thought I'd start working with him first while the other guys were stretching out. So I went up in the ring, and I started holding my pads to this guy, and he wasn't really cooperating, And I said, and he's doing stuff. I said, no, I want, here's a jab, boom, throw the thing out, well, then he figures out I know what I'm talking about, know. So we start dancing up there.
Not just a hairdresser.
Right, and we start doing it, and I start getting him in form, and he starts cracking the pads and liking it. Once you get your balance under you, start doing it, which is impossible almost to do without a trainer showing you how to do it, because how you think to do it, you'll start at the top of your body instead of the bottom, and I've developed the language to communicate that to people. So, started working with them and getting them going, and then they said, well, then I worked with the other guy that my wife had met a little bit there, and he was, and so they said, well, can we spar? And I said, sure. So I let them, they put on their gear. It took forever to get their helmets on and stuff, and the one good guy and the other guy went in there working, and then the little guy sitting over there stretching out, getting ready. And so these two guys start sparring, and they're just kind of. So I realized nobody's going to get hurt here. This is okay, because they're really not throwing them. So, and I'm coaching both of them. I coach the one about the jab. He starts hitting the other guy with the jab. The other guy looks over at me like pissed off because they're angry because I'm coaching him. So, and so we, and they got done sparring. And they say, "Hey, you want to do a round?" The little guy. So. The little guy's sitting over there, and I'm standing up right on the ropes, and this little guy, instead of walking up the stairs where I'm at to get in the ring, he jumps up on the apron, rolls under the ring, and stands up. Now, you know the way guys are, and usually when you start picking on one of them in a form of banter, the other two will kind of join in and go, and the first thing I ever said to this guy was, he's just, the blank damn stairs are right over here. I look at the guy like that, and it was kind of, I'm looking at his buddies waiting for him to go, yeah, Goon, they're right over there, and I'm not getting no rise from his friends. So I just let the thing go and let them spar because they're out there. So they get done with the sparring, and I worked with the two guys, and here's the little guy over there hitting the bag like this, and I thought, I'm going to go over there and help him too. He's part of the deal and paid his dough. So I go over there and I said, listen, this is what I want you to do is you got your nose right here. Get back in here. See if you ever caught a punch. Did you ever know how to cut? Well, I don't want to get hit. I said, well, good. Catch this. And I stuck it right out to his face, and he goes, I said, good. Now we're doing it here. And so he starts working with him, and then we're doing it. And people start doing it. You remember, you did it, Jack. You came in. And it's hard not to get overexcited. Right. Or too tired or overexcited. He starts getting overexcited, and he's not really listening. I said, listen, just sit down over there, and let me get your buddy over. Get back over here. Well, the buddy's not getting off the chair. And I'm used to when I say things in my gym, people jump.
You're the boss.
So, and the guy's reluctant. I said, get over here. And so he gets over and starts whacking on the thing, and the little guy's, over there. Can I do it? Yeah, come on over here. So, then I get to work with him one more time on the stuff, and then we get done. They were kind of, nice guys, take off their headgear and stuff. We're talking. They're asking me about my kids and the guys I'm training. Really nice guys. And so I said, I'm looking at my watch, and by then it's 5:30. I said, I got to get out of here. It's getting late. Your hour's up, and
they're still taking your time.
Well, they're still taking my time. And the guy says, I just said, because he was. I said, you're in here from town. What are you doing in town here? You said you're from out of town, Gleason's. What are you doing in Traverse City? And this guy doesn't want to tell me what he's doing in Traverse City. And I said, no, what are you doing in Traverse City? He's kind of him and hawing. And I just said, listen, I don't care why you're here or not. I want my $60, and so I can get out of here. And they go, oh, no, Bill, it's not like that. We had a great time here. You guys is great. We're here with Bob Dylan, and he's singing tonight. And that's Bob over there, the little guy I'm yelling at. First thing I ever said was, the damn stairs are right over here. It was the first I looked, and I'm looking in his eyes. When I'm going, come on, look at me, and I'm looking at Bob Dylan, not even knowing what I'm looking at, yelling at him like he's nobody. Well, anyway, I find out it's Bob Dylan, so I start running for the free T-shirts and stuff, because they give him a couple shirts, and they start talking, and he was just a really kind man. They went out, it started raining, just cats and dogs, so they had to bring their tour bus in to load up their motorcycles so they get back and play at Interlochen that night. And so they're loading them up, and they finally get the thing turned around, loaded up, and the doorway opens up for the motor bus, and Bob Dylan walks back out, and he said, I just really want to thank you. He said, this was great. And he gave me 4 7th-row tickets for a show. And so we went to the show that night and met those guys. They took us backstage, and then we got out there, and that was kind of the story. You never know.
So that's how you got the great seats at the Bob Dylan.
Yeah, that was it. How I got the Bob Dylan seats.
Okay, great. Well, who were some of the other boxers that you've known?
Box. I grew up with Floyd Mayweather.
Really?
Well, with his dad. We used to be the same age, and we fought together and went to the same high school together. I've known Floyd Jr. since he was a little kid. I come from Grand Rapids.
Okay.
And the toughest place in the planet is the Midwest.
Really?
the toughest people in the world really come from Michigan or around this area. Joe Louis, Ray Robinson, Tommy Hearns, Stanley Ketchel, Floyd Mayweather.
Spinks was from here too.
Spinks was from St. Louis.
Okay.
The toughest guys come from the Midwest. This is all. I come from that culture of toughness, and so I don't know really where I was going with that.
Well, did you? I kind of baited you. Did you ever meet Muhammad Ali?
I've got signed gloves from Muhammad. I have never met him. I want to go down to Berrien Springs before he passes away because so many of my friends have met him. They've been in the game.
Oh, really?
I know people. They're friends of him. In fact, that's how I got the gloves signed because I know people that know him. Bump and Anthony Drell and Andre Drell. He's a professional boxer and Olympian. They were good friends of him and went down and said, oh, yeah, I should go down there and see him. I did interview Joe Frazier for the Express magazine.
Oh, yeah.
And that was extremely, he's a very interesting character. And
They still mad about that teasing that he got, right?
well, it's, yeah, kind of mad about the teasing, but just, it was, you know, I think Muhammad thinks nothing but the best, but Joe, I don't know how much of it's personal or how much of it's really, you know, I mean, it was rotten there, but you think, I mean, eventually you got to live in the day. And I mean, everybody's got a sad story about how much somebody abused him, and I think Muhammad has nothing but fondness for him, and I think, you know, Joe's got a right to have his resentment, but it's his.
But Joe
and it's
actually loaned Ali some money.
No, he loaned him money, and he was a good man. I mean, there's no getting around that. That Joe, you know, Joe got hurt, and he had a right to be hurt. But yeah, I think he still wears it on his sleeve. But you know, that's.
Yeah, did I tell you about meeting Ali the time?
You told me you met him at an airport once.
Well, no, it was on the streets in New York City, and it was just an extraordinary experience. There was just a big mob of people. I guess they were all black, but I was walking down the street and I thought, well, what are those guys doing over there? You know, and that was my younger days when I was not as smart or as brave or whatever, but I walked over and I heard this Ali, you know, somebody mentioned Ali. So I thought, well, I want to meet this guy. I'd like to see this guy. So I walk in there, and I got some more here if you want.
I'm also thinking.
I walk into this crowd, and they talk about Ali, and I think, well, this is cool, you know. So I get into the middle of the crowd, and here's Ali giving out autographs, and people were handing him dollar bills, you know, and he's signing them and giving them back, and I hand him a dollar bill, and the guy beside me says, hey man, what are you going to do if he doesn't give it back, you know? I go, oh, nothing, you know. So anyway, he gives me back this dollar bill, and then there's this little kid, 10 or 12 years old, comes up, and he says, hey Ali, you're not so tough, I'll fight you, put him up. And Ali says, all right, move back, get back. And everybody makes a big circle around this little 10 or 12-year-old kid. And the kid had this huge grin on his face, and he's bobbing and weaving and getting closer to Ali and throwing these punches from about, 2 yards away, And Ali just had the meanest look on his face. And then Ali moved his hand once. The kid jumped back about 5 feet,
They usually do.
and then he bobbed and weaved. He got a little bit closer. Ali moved his hand again. The kid jumped back about 5 feet. I don't know if I had a camera or not with me, but it was such an extreme situation.
He's such a charming, graceful man.
Oh, and he loved kids.
Oh, but always. And that has never changed his whole life. He's a phenomenal guy. He's never charged one dime for an autograph, ever, because he figures that's what God wants him to do. And he's just, he's really good that way.
He was really gracious with these kids. And, I really, it was a great experience for me.
We're kind of missing that, really. We haven't had a hero like that in sports for quite a while.
George Foreman eventually came up.
George was a phenomenal man, too. I mean, those are two of the neatest personas in sports, and they happen to be boxing. And I find it, it's because I love boxing, you know that, but, Muhammad Ali is the most popular person to ever walk on this planet. More people know who he is in more third world villages than anybody.
Yeah.
And I think, and he's still alive. Most people don't get greatness like that until they die.
Right.
So, yeah, that would be a sad day when he passes away for sure.
Yeah.
For people. Yeah.
Well, what else we got to talk about?
We just, you know, I do this stuff with kids, and
people, you don't have to be an at-risk kid. There's programs that people can sign their kid up if the kid can't fit into an organized sport with a team sport, so to speak. There might be something for him in boxing. Huh?
There might be, sure.
Is it safe though? I mean, don't they get hit in the head?
Oh, they get hit in the head for sure. That's what you're supposed to do.
Right. But they wear headgear.
Yeah, but the headgear's, I mean, in all reality, I mean, what knocks people unconscious, what hurts people is when the head shakes. So headgear doesn't do anything for that. Doesn't do anything for neck trauma. I mean, you can knock people out with a headgear on just as easy as you can without.
I see.
The thing about the headgear is when they bump heads, there's no head-to-head cuts, bloods, bounce, you know, like that. So that's pretty much what the headgear is. But boxing in general, I mean, it has a violent intention. So, and people, when something bad happens in boxing, people notice it. But on the all in all, amateur boxing is 24th on the injury list for amateur sports.
Well, a hot round ball and baseball.
A lot safer than cheerleading.
Knock him off the head.
Take it easy on him. He's not that young anymore, you know.
It's a lot safer than cheerleading. So, for injuries.
Or a ground ball in baseball can hit you in the throat, or, you know, there's a lot of dangerous sports. So, this is, shall we say, just a sport, not more or less dangerous than most.
And yeah, it's like I said, it's a great lesson for, you know, it's a great lesson for teaching people how to. You know, give more than they take in a different position, but it's always amazing. You know, you get these two guys that go out there and they'll bang the heck out of each other. And what do they do when the bell rings and it's over? You know, give each other a hug, pat on the back, and good job. You know, and that's what you look like. I mean, boxers are just like lawyers, and that's what I tell all my kids. You know, every time two of them get together, one of them loses. So, you know, but that's, you know, losing isn't what. You know, it's how you lose. It's how you conduct yourself. It's about going the distance. You know, it's about when things get tough, sticking in there, hanging in there, and going the distance.
And you can tell the prepared kids from the ones that don't work.
Sure.
And it teaches you that you can get results. If you work at something, you can get favorable results, and you've got something that other people don't have.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
and I don't think that. I think the activity is. I mean, I've studied boxers. And I've seen a lot of kids in boxing gyms. I've been one my whole life in what goes on, and I see some of the kids on the streets, and the kids seem to, for some reason, boxing deflates their egos and makes them a little bit more humble because of the, you know, they're less likely to. No, I mean, under an alcohol-induced incident, anything can happen. But
Right.
just in general, people start to get respect for what they go through, for the degree of violence. And then when you hear somebody talking something in a verbal thing that's aggressive and maybe violent, you kind of go, you know, it's easier to separate the wheat from the chaff on that.
I got into Taekwondo when I was a kid.
Sure.
And if there's one thing I learned, the size and disposition of somebody is no indication of whether they can fight or not. That you have some of the littlest guys that seem like the nicest guys. You get them in a ring or in a fight situation, and they're incredible.
You can't tell tough until you see it.
Yeah.
And that's what we used to, you know, back in the, I don't know, 15 years ago, they used to have these things called the tough man competition.
Right, right.
Well, I trained a couple guys, those guys, and what I would always do is I'd get my guys there, and I'd pick the biggest, strongest looking, most hairiest tattooed guy and say, that's what we want for our first fight. Because chances are he wasn't the best fighter in the group.
Okay.
But it gave my guy a lot of confidence when he beat him. And that way, when the tough guy rolled around, we were a little bit more ready. There's a lot of preparation.
Yeah.
And like I said, it takes determination to do it. And yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting Robin. Robin and her group of
the ladies
working
there?
out. The
Yes,
ladies.
yes.
I'm just intrigued by this. I've seen big time wrestling. They've got ladies wrestling,
Right.
And that's not anything that's, you know, a sport. That's just.
Well, it's
It's
entertainment.
just a performance.
It's entertainment and a performance. This is athletics.
The women, whether it's aerobics or, you know, there's so many of those exercises that men just aren't as good as women, you know. And
They do pretty good with their core stuff, and I mean, in reality, women aren't physically as strong as men, and they're, you know, I mean, nowhere near it. A 112-pound male is probably about as strong as a 180-pound female.
I see.
I mean, as far as if you wanted to put Layla Ali in there, I mean, there's a lot of men flyweights that would
Okay.
dust her off the mat because,
Right.
but it's kind of about it's about the intention though, and it's empowering for women. It's empowering for them to go out there and know they can swing something. I got a joke with my wife, and it's kind of like I go, Robin, you could beat up any drunk with that right hand, you know, because I mean, if you can throw a straight punch and decisive action, and I like training people. I like empowering people with that because and a lot of it's just about being decisive, and that's what it takes in boxing, to be determined, to be decisive, but just, you know, empowering people with being able to make decisive decisions. And like, you know, bullies always have one thing in common, whether it's in the ring or on the street, and that's that they're, you know, they react off of your fear. They react off of your reaction to the fear. And, you know, and if somebody just, you know, looks back and says, geez, of all the people in the room, you happen to pick me, I guess it's not your lucky day, they'll walk away.
Yeah.
Because they're not used to that kind of determination. You know, when people, and I think that's really important for women to know that, you know, I mean, you're better off going down there taking a swing than not. And,
Yeah.
And decisive action is just, let me just relate it to a little story, which I heard was really neat. And I tell this to a lot of my gals that box because it's not about size, it's not about anything, it's about mental focus. This one woman was getting carjacked in Detroit, had her kid, just put her young child in her back seat. Some locked him up, went around to the front, and two guys jumped her and said, you know, give me the keys to your car. And she said, let me get my baby. And he said, give me the keys to the car, and they called her the beating name. She had the keys, and she threw them, which to me was decisive action. They ran to get the keys, she ran in there, unlocked her baby, and then they took the car, of course, and got arrested down the street. But just decisiveness like that. And that's really what boxing is. It's a lot of little decisions on defending yourself.
I think you just mentioned that adrenaline situation.
Yes.
That you can function, you can think, you
Yes.
can make decisions.
Yes.
But if you're not accustomed to that adrenaline flying through your body, then it can paralyze you, right?
Right. See, I mean, as soon as a good fighter starts feeling adrenaline in their body, they start putting their feet on the ground.
Yeah.
That's where you got all that footwork and dancing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because once you put the adrenaline down on your feet and take it off your shoulders, you can start throwing punches really good.
I did get jumped once, and I'm sure you've had the same experience where suddenly the fear and everything just kind of disappears, and you're just into the focus of, well, what do you do next? You know.
Well, sure.
And, yeah.
No, sure, and that's Yeah, I mean, you can't defend yourself against somebody that's coming at you brandishing a weapon.
Right,
but if they have to pull it out, if they've got a knife, I mean, you've got a great shot. If you
but if you've got your mind.
If you've got your mind.
If you've got your mind, you've got a chance to get away. You've got a lot of choices.
Right, and that's why we deal with the fear. That's why I teach fear. That's why we go, because, if you don't have, there's a little thing we put on the shirts and it says, fear is the soil that courage binds its roots to. So if you're not afraid, then there's no courage. And if you're not afraid, you're not sane. If you're walking in that ring with somebody and you're not afraid, then you're not sane. And it's kind of like fear is one of those things that it's, I'd like a fearless life. Well, then you might get hit before you go in front of a car, And it's about manageability with that emotion and the fact that emotion, sure, but through fear we get courage, we get faith, we get a lot of things that we wouldn't get without it.
Okay, well, I think we're, do you have a website, by the way?
I do, www.triggerboxing.com.
www.triggerboxing.com.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I knew you'd be a great Tea Party guest. And,
well, I don't,
and I really appreciate your coming by.
Oh, my pleasure, Jack.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for the tea party.
And thanks for watching.